From out of the depths of hell rose a warrior born from ashes to be able to rise again like a phoenix, and to slay all those before him with incredible bravery and fearless determination. In today's video, I'm going to go over the build for the BarBeric build guide, a build that sets ablaze all of those who oppose him, and doesn't quit when the going gets tough. Wish I could say the same for the showrunners that forced the rush ending of the series. More on that later. I'm going to go over the attributes, the skill tree, the gear for my character and my mercenary, and afterwards I'm going to show you guys some gameplay so you could see this build in action. But do keep in mind that when it comes to this build, there are different ways you can be able to gear the character depending on your needs, whether you're trying to go for maximum DPS, you're trying to do a magic find character, or a hybrid of the two. Just keep in mind when it comes to looking at the gear choices that I'm going to be choosing, that you can choose alternative gear depending on the demand that you have for your build. Before we actually get into the build, the comment shout out for this video is going to be Earl of Swagshire for my overall thoughts of the Diablo 4 beta video, whom enjoyed the breakdown of all the different aspects that I was able to find for the upcoming game. I'm really stoked that you enjoyed it and hope that you'll be able to give it a try with the next open beta coming up very soon. Now let's go ahead and get into the video. For the attributes, there's enough strength to be able to equip my gear, with a few added points to be able to equip Demon Limb for the buffing of the enchant proc. Then there's enough dexterity to be able to hit 10,000 attack rating once fully buffed up, and the remaining points are going to go into vitality. For the skill trees, starting with the combat skills, I maxed out Frenzy as this is going to be the skill that we use to deal damage, and then I maxed Double Swing as it synergizes Frenzy to be able to add even more damage. For the combat masteries, Sword Mastery is maxed out as I'm going to be using swords with this build instead of using axes. This way I don't have to worry about repairing my weapons. Then 1 point into increased stamina, increased speed, Iron Skin, and initially 1 point into natural resistance. Lastly, for the Warcry skill tree, Taunt is going to be maxed out as it synergizes Frenzy to add even more damage. Maxed out Battle Orders, 1 point into Battle Command, and with the last remaining point, I went and put it into natural resistance. For the gear, do keep in mind that this is a hero edited character. All the items that you see here are not single self found on single player offline, nor do I play online to be able to have someone assist me with helping me get these items to then showcase in this video. I wanted to put this build together myself to be able to show if it would be worth the time and the resources needed to be able to make it effective, in case anyone would be curious to be able to build this out for themselves, and also just for the spectacle of the concept itself. For the helm, I'm using Flickering Flame with the negative 15% to enemy fire resistance, boost to mana, and the level 8 resist fire aura. I chose this over a 3 open socket helm with 5/5 fire facets because I needed help with the negative resistance penalty that the Thunder Charm I'll be using has, and the trade-off to have fire resistance compared to adding the additional fire skill damage seemed like the more ideal choice for me to be able to help with survivability, but it is a good option as it will add more fire damage overall with this build. The amulet is Mara's for the plus to skills, small attributes boost, as well as the 30L res. The body armor is a Jeweler's Dust Shroud of the Whale, socketed with 4 5/5 fire facets for the huge boost to life, negative 20% to enemy fire resistance, as well as a 20% to fire skill damage. However, a plain 4 open socket base with fire facets is a great alternative to use as the armor that I'm using only adds life in comparison. The weapons are dual Phoenix Runewords and Phase Blades to not have to worry about durability once we are fighting, but it also has the Firestorm proc, enhanced damage, ignore target's defense to be able to allow for more hits to have all the fire damage from the gear and the charms be effective, negative 28% to enemy fire resistance from each, and the level 13 Redemption Aura on each will be able to help with regaining life and mana while fighting. A good alternative would be dual Hand of Justice weapons because they have the negative enemy fire resistance as well, and they also have the Holy Fire Aura. The reason I didn't go with either both of these or one of each one, a Hand of Justice and a Phoenix, is I want the damage to be coming from my weapon specifically, not to have something that is going to be creating pulse damage from afar to be able to kill things before I be able to reach them. However, if you were to create this build, you can choose whichever one of the weapons you would want, but I'm trying to prioritize survivability as well as to be able to have, again, the damage coming from the weapons themselves when striking. The boots are Gore Riders for the faster run walk, Crushing Blow, Open Wounds, and Deadly Strike. The first ring is a Ravenfrost ring for the attack rating, dexterity, and cannot be frozen. The belt is Wilhelm's Pride for the dual leech, which is going to be necessary with this build despite having the Redemption Aura, but I'll go over that more later. The second ring is a rare attack rating, dual leech, fire res ring. The gloves are crafted blood gloves for the IAS, dual leech, life, and fire res. However, a good alternative that would be able to help you with fire res would be Laying of Hands, as it also has IAS as well as enhanced damage to demons. On switch, I'm going to be using dual Hustle Phase Blades for the burst of speed procs to be able to get around faster when attacking. You can use Harmony as an alternative, however you wouldn't benefit from its Vigor aura once you switch back to your main hand. In the inventory is my Cube, Bolt Tomes, Annie, Torch, and in keeping with the prior elemental damage bar builds, I'm going to be using fire damage small charms, and the grand charm is the Flame Rift Thunder Charm to be able to ensure that nothing we fight is fire immune. For the additional stats, there's 16% Life Leech, 28% Mana Leech, 35% Deadly Strike, 20% to fire skill damage, as well as a negative 91% to enemy fire resistance. Now for the Mercenary, he is important to have to allow the damage that we're doing go even further. The helm is Andario's visage, socketed with an IAS Fire Res jewel, Fortitude for the body armor, and the weapon is Infinity for the Conviction aura to lower the resistance of everything we fight. Now to quickly go over the damage potential for this build. Taking into consideration a monster that's been sundered now has 95% to that resistance. Then Conviction at level 12 reduces the resistance down 17 more percent, as it works with a 1/5% penalty to sundered monsters, making the resistance now. Adding that with a negative 91% from all the gear makes the resistance now. Now for those that really want to go above and beyond, for those patient enough to really try to max the lowering of the monster's resistances, you can have dual plagues to switch for the proc to lower res when struck, and at level 12, it would lower the resistances down 11 more percent as, just like with Conviction, works at 1/5 effectiveness to the monster that's been sundered, dropping the resistance even lower to around. I won't be using Plague for this example, but for those who maybe were curious to know, that's where this build would stand if it was used. Now that we've discussed the attributes, the skill trees, the gear for my character and my mercenary, let's go ahead and check out this build in action to see how well it actually plays out. Of all the 4 different elemental style barbarian builds that I've now done, the fire build has to be my favorite visually. The fire effects constantly going off and seeing everything incinerate within a few hits shows that this build is just far too hot to handle.
All we've got to do is just keep our pants on.
I mentioned earlier that this build needs Life Leech despite having the Redemption aura, and that's because Redemption only works when there's corpses. Of all the elemental bar builds, this fire version is arguably the slowest of them all as far as kill speed, despite that it's not a slow clear speed build, but it's still slower than the other 3. This build's playstyle relies on you and your mercenary fighting together side by side to be efficient with clear speed, as him helping you, especially when swarmed by a large mob, allows for more corpses dropping, allowing Redemption to be beneficial for you. And unfortunately with the low weapon damage, the Life Leech helps mainly with being able to maintain your current health that you'd have until your Redemption aura is able to replenish your health for you. If your mercenary wanders off, it starts to put your survivability at risk, as the Life Leech won't bring in more health than the enemies could potentially hit you for, but if played to the build's strengths, it's quite efficient with clear speed, survivability, and overall is a fun build to play.
Not even death can save you from me.
Now as promised, for any of you Game of Thrones fans, since this build is named after one of the characters of the show, if you've ever wondered why the last season felt rushed, here's the sad truth to it. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss had source material for Game of Thrones up to season 5 thanks to George R.R. Martin's books. But starting with season 6, they had to come up with the continuation of the story on their own. At the end of the season, they couldn't handle the stress of it and wanted out, but stayed on with the show until their time to leave could present itself. Because of the amazing success with Game of Thrones thus far, they were contacted by Lucasfilm to take on the task of the next Star Wars trilogy to continue after The Rise of Skywalker. The deal wasn't signed for, but they wanted out as soon as possible to start working on the Star Wars trilogy. Despite being given more money and episodes to be able to give the season a proper ending, Tweedledee and Tweedledum rushed the last season to be able to move on with their careers. At the same time, Netflix also approached them to be able to start a series that they were going to be paid very handsomely for. As mentioned before, the Star Wars deal wasn't signed off on, but it was only in the talks with the expectation of it actually being finalized. But when Game of Thrones ended and all the backlash from the fans for how the series ended surfaced, Tweedledee and Tweedledum fell into hot water. There are 2 possible choices for what happened next. The first is that they ended up bailing on the Star Wars series and went to Netflix instead. The second is that Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilms, saw how bad the last season was, and even worse, the backlash from it all, and backed out of the deal. But Tweedledee and Tweedledum still had Netflix to fall back on, as Netflix looked at the overall success of the show and still wanted them. I'm personally going with the latter, but either way, Lucasfilms then wanted Rian Johnson to be able to step in and create the next trilogy. And like Benioff and Weiss, he too was swept up by Netflix to be able to create Knives Out, leaving both the Game of Thrones fans and Lucasfilm filled with disappointment in 2019. I really enjoyed trying this build out and seeing the potential it has as a non-meta build concept. However, if you want to try out a build concept that's similar to this, but want to switch up the type of elemental damage being dealt, check out one of the previous versions I made going over different elemental damages, all of which have their own different playstyles that I'm sure you'll find enjoyable to test out. Videos linked down in the description below. And with this build comes the end of the series of the elemental damage bar builds. And for those who would want to make this build, I'll also have the hero editor website that I used to make this build linked down in the description below as well for you to give this build a try if you'd like, or just want to try out any other build in the game in general. Huge shout out to Proner for creating it and allowing builds such as the one in this video to be made to test out and enjoy.
I can't carry anymore.
And just for fun, here's how the build will play out using Whirlwind. Despite that Frenzy overall is going to deal more damage with this build concept. And that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to see if this build would be something that you would be interested in going into the future. And if anything, at least just enjoyed the video. If you like this kind of content, want to see more, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell notification to be notified whenever a new video comes out.
Come on. Come on. Come on, then. There you are. There you are.
And if you like this video, please let me know by leaving a like. It really is appreciated to be able to help my channel to grow. And if you want to see more of my Diablo 2 Resurrected content, make sure to click the card in the corner up above to check out my Diablo 2 Resurrected playlist with a lot of videos already in it, with a lot more coming in the very near future. Other than that, I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.